India this week landed on the moon. And, you know, first of all, congratulations to India. It's an incredible achievement that only a handful of countries have ever achieved. And only a few people have ever stood on the moon, including one Armstrong, might I add. But the real matter of fact here is that the UK spent £2.3 billion in foreign aid dressed up as investments to NGOs in India over the last 4 years. Now, myself and a few others who were talking about this online, and Patrick Christie's here on GB News, received a torrent of abuse for calling out terrible British policy this week, as you can see from the lovely tweet here. Now, a lot of the responses to that tweet claimed that the money in India was being spent on radicalising Hindus and converting them to Christianity and attacking their democracy. Well, as you know, I love to do a little bit of research. So I went and looked at how that money was spent. And at least 85% of that money was spent on bringing the Indian public out of poverty, building new schools, building railways, roads, and a massive amount of other infrastructure, including creating jobs and educating them. Now, what's so interesting about that is that the Indians don't actually want this aid. Their Prime Minister rejected the aid a few years ago, all the way back in 2015. So it begs the question, if the Indians don't want this aid, then what do they want? What does India want? Well, it was very clear to me that they want more reparations from us. They want £45 trillion in reparations to Great Britain, and they also want the crown jewels. Now, globalists here like Albie and our missing friend Benjamin Butterworth this evening would tell you that these investments are worthwhile. They keep Britain a major player in the world. Well, I'll tell you this. I would rather the £12.5 billion aid that we've spent to foreign countries over the last few years goes to public schools here, trains our doctors and nurses and gives them a fair pay, hires more police officers to tackle the crime epidemic in this country, and give it back to the British people. It's been too long that the government haven't been on the side of Britain, particularly when we're in a cost of living crisis. Now, Albie, I'd love to ask you, how do you defend the actions of the Conservative government over the last 10 years?
First of all, Alex, you've tried to confect some sort of disagreement between you and I about India spending $75 million on its space mission, which actually isn't very much, by the way. It's not a very large sum of money, so I think it's impressive that India have managed to do that mission.
How much have you got?
It costs well, no, but in terms of a government spending, public spending, £75 million is not a lot to get to the moon. I think it costs Russia about $200 million to do the same mission, so well done to the Indians for doing it cheaper than the Russians. But your point about globalists, yes, I am a globalist, cuff me. I do think it is important that Britain has global relationships and that we look to work with our international partners and friends to make the world a better, more prosperous and safer place.
So you're
but
saying
I agree with your point
yes,
about aid going to India when they seem to have $75 million to spend on a space.
But I think you're missing,
this is exactly my point. You can't be a globalist and say that, well, you know, it's fine for us to send aid to countries, but then, you know, when it comes to Britain being in a crisis like we are today, we can't even solve the immigration problem.
Answer me this quickly. Answer me this.
Answer me
this.
If
you're not a globalist, are you a nationalist?
I am a nationalist, and I believe that Britain should be put first.
Can I just make a really crucial point? Britain are being put first because the amount we invest in India, we make more in return.
Actually, Amy, part of my research showed very, very clearly that we make no investment from this. We actually haven't gained anything back.
We literally invest into business, and which increases trade, which comes back. We make more money in return from the deals with India. Yes, we give some to NGOs to alleviate poverty in India. Oh, my God, how terrible. I'd hate to support that. But overall, it is an investment worth the return.
Amy, charity starts at home. There are children living in poverty in this country. Surely before we become virtue signalling, we're sweeping in with our aid packages of money, we should resolve the issues on our own.
We're literally getting more money to support those issues at home.
I think that fundamentally
we should reallocate it.
The problem here, and I would actually say so, Alex concluded his little speech about this spending by saying that we'd prefer this money be spent in this country. I prefer the money not be taken by taxpayers at all, and I'd rather actually reduce the tax burden. We've got the highest tax burden since the Second World War. I'd rather we take that money, instead of sending it to India, give people back their tax money.
I would love that too, by the way. I think the British public deserve a tax break.
Do.
But if we are going to spend the money, which this Conservative government obviously has no control over the budget.
What about the international aid?
We might as well give it back.
What about the international aid that's gone towards tackling FGM in the Middle East and Africa, that has gone to Yemen, a war zone which actually needs...
That's not...
No, but your argument seems to be against... Your argument seems to be against international aid altogether.
And international aid that's beneficial for Britain.
Spent on some very worthy causes around the world, which we should be proud
charities,
of.
Albie,
and aid is tiny.
We
shouldn't be proud of our budget.
Some fantastic publicly funded charities that the public will support, and that's where the aid should come from. It should be a trickle down, not a, hey, we're going to take your tax money while you're all suffering, can't even pay your energy bills.
Did you just advocate for trickle-down economics?
Send it to India or somewhere else as an investment.
What I will say is I remember a report by Ream's colleague, Christopher Snowden, where we were given money to the Chinese in foreign aid to try and get them off of salt, to try and get them to stop putting more salt on their food.
Nonsense.
It's true.
I know I'm saying that's a stupid thing to do.
Can I also tell you, you'll laugh at this, we also funded the Spice Girls in Africa. There was an African version of the Spice Girls which we sent a few £1 million to in aid. So, you know, I know we have started to change the way we do aid in this country, which is a very good thing, but it's not going far enough.
But the aid budget isn't going far enough. It's absolutely tiny. It should
get
It's
smaller.
quite embarrassingly small. It's like a 20th of a test and trace.
It's also about
I don't
where
think if you
this money
ask the
goes.
British public whether 2.3 billion means a lot to them, I think they will agree.
But you're
that
ignoring my point that it's coming back in return.
But I'm telling you that it's not. From the research that we've done, it's absolutely not coming.
So, Alex, would you be comfortable if international aid stopped and, as a result, people died in Yemen?
What does it got?
Albie, this is a...
Would you be comfortable with that? Yes or no?
You are using emotion.
Yes or no?
If that's the case, why don't we send the troops into Yemen and end the war?
Or no?
You know, like, your whole argument is we should interfere. We are not the police of the world.
You can't answer the question.
Britain is in trouble.
Yes or no?
You need to look after... no, we shouldn't be sending...
You would be comfortable.
No, you can't tell me that I'm going to kill children in Yemen and me say, yes, I'm going to agree with it.
Let me come to your defence here, Alex. That is not the conclusion that he is coming to. What he is saying is that...
Sounded like it to me.
It absolutely isn't. What he is saying...
And international aid tomorrow.
Hang on.
That is not what he said. What he is saying is that actually we need to be more careful about where this money goes. Now, what I will say is that when it comes to young girls that is facing FGM, horrible, horrible things that are at the hands of most of these authoritarian regimes, why would we want to be giving more money to those authoritarian regimes? We need to be more careful about where this money goes. I don't want to see these dictatorial individuals lining their pockets with British taxpayer money.
All right.